All right, so despite promises to move quickly on DACA, it's finding a slow start in Congress. House Speaker Paul Ryan is planning to meet with Nancy Pelosi, along with the heads of the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus today to discuss paths forward on DACA. But the reality is it has fallen from the top of the agenda. Congressman Mike Coffman, who was working on a bipartisan plan called the Bridge Act with Luis Gutierrez, said with everything going on, it's been put on the back burner. A Senate hearing on the program to keep children of undocumented immigrants in the country was postponed in Hurricane Irma's wake. And there are still deep misgivings among Republican leadership, like House Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte, who wants to see gangs and border security resolved first. And during a Christian Science Monitor breakfast, White House Legislative Director Mark Short said that President Trump may not insist that Congress fund the border wall as part of a deal to resolve DACA.
I think that we are most interested in getting border security, and the president has made a commitment to the American people that he believes that a physical barrier is important to that equation of border security. Whether or not that is part of a DACA equation or whether or not that's other legislative vehicle, I don't want us to bind ourselves into a construct that makes reaching a conclusion on DACA impossible.
Again, not to be driven by polls, but if you just don't want to do extraordinarily stupid things that make you less popular, and it looks like the president is actually interested in seeing his poll numbers go up of late. And if you look at Gallup last week, he was at 34. I think he was up to 38 this week. You have two issues there. One, DACA, that even 75% of his own supporters want him to work with Congress to make sure that Dreamers aren't deported. And then you've got the wall, which has never been popular. You can even go back to the middle of the campaign when it was helping him win the Republican nominations. Something like 60% of Americans were opposed to it. And I'm sure that number's gone up even more. So what we're hearing here, people say, oh, this is a betrayal of the voters and da-da-da. Well, no, actually, this is somebody inside the White House saying, you know what, maybe we want to be on the right side. Right. Of issues with the American people for one.
Certainly the crowds that came to President or then candidate Trump's rallies every night wanted the wall, but you're right, it never polled well across the nation. There's real issues about how it would ever get paid for or constructed. With DACA, with Dreamers, he is facing intense pressure from members of his own party, business leaders, many in the White House, who are like saying this is a problematic issue. This is something where if you go after this, there's not much good politically. If we're talking about poll numbers, about the idea of children who were brought here, who had no say in the matter, and sending them home to countries where they don't remember, if they came over as infants. And also to piggyback on a point from earlier, the president, who of course more than anything fancies himself as a deal maker, a president who likes wins, even small wins, loved what happened last week. Has told people close to him that the headlines he got for the deal with Pelosi and Schumer were some of the best that he's received since he came in office, and he's inclined to at least go down that path a little more to see if he can get more good press.
And Steve, this Dreamers deal is a deal that it seems like it's shaping up exactly the way a president and Congress would want it to shape up. You've got things the Republicans want, and you've got things the Democrats want. It seems that somebody can put together a package. It won't be everything that Paul Ryan wants, and it won't be everything that Nancy Pelosi wants, but maybe they can put together a deal that actually compromises.
Yeah, this should be one of the issues, and I'm on the more pessimistic end about how much cooperation and compromise we're really going to see from Democrats and Republicans on things like taxes. But on something like this, where there is broad bipartisan support for it, obviously most or all the Democrats, a hefty number of Republicans, there ought to be a way to get to a deal. And it may be on the back burner at the moment because of the hurricanes and other pressing business, but we've got a 6-month window, and I think you'll see it get it done.
So a subplot to all of this is the harsh words Congressman Luis Gutierrez had for White House Chief of Staff General John Kelly. Gutierrez recently called Kelly a hypocrite and a disgrace to the uniform he used to wear. Very harsh, because he supported Trump's decision to end DACA. Facing open criticism yesterday, Gutierrez doubled down on his critique, calling Kelly mean. Quote, he's a politician, okay, not a general. I don't see a uniform. He's a politician who works for Donald Trump. Gutierrez told the crowd, a politician who didn't stand up when the President of the United States attacked a real war hero, John McCain.
I don't even know where to start with that. That is so outrageous. And to say he's mean because we're now going at the end, this thing is going to be actually law of the land. It's not going to be an executive order. It's going to be law of the land. And to say that a guy that's given his entire life to this country is, you know what, sometimes you just got to say you're sorry.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to say, I screwed up. That was just
I think
horrific.
there are very strong feelings about President Trump, especially among Democrats, and some of them are very legitimate. And I just worry that within all this, we normalize horrific behavior on one side and not the other. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Listen, I served with him.
What he's trying to say
I like
is
him. It doesn't matter what he's trying to say. He screwed up, and he needs to apologize. It's disgraceful, and
well,
you actually.
But he can say, "I disagree with General Kelly for supporting Donald Trump," who.
But he doesn't know. He doesn't see that's the thing.
Denigrated a war hero.
He doesn't even,
I don't agree with that.
He doesn't even know, Willie, what General Kelly is doing in the background.
I know.
He doesn't even know if General Kelly was the one that said, "Listen, Barack Obama himself said when he passed this in 2012 that this was only a temporary fix, that Congress had to act." That's what Barack Obama said. And so maybe General Kelly, none of us know, maybe General Kelly said, well, okay, if you make this announcement, you can make this announcement, but you're going to face a lot of pressure in the next 6 months. You can either pass, etc. We don't know what went on behind. So to denigrate a man and to call him a disgrace to the uniform is just sad and pathetic, and he needs to take it back.
And he is a general.
Those are not words to use.
Despite what Gutierrez said, he remains a general for life. A guy who gave 50 years, half a century to this country in the military, has given of service, who gave his son, lost his son, gave his son to this country. I don't think he needs a lecture from Mr. Gutierrez about honor and courage. The other part of it is, as you said, Joe, it doesn't make sense. You're getting what you want out of this deal. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer won that argument. DACA is going to become law. It's going to be codified, Peter Baker. So beyond the obvious rank partisanship and a throw to his base to say, yeah, don't worry, guys, I'm anti-Trump on all questions, even General Kelly, it doesn't make sense given the deal that was struck last week.
Well, in fact, General Kelly, as Secretary of Homeland Security at the beginning of the Trump administration, went to Congress and talked to them about the DACA issue and said, look, we don't think this is illegal. You guys should go ahead and legislate this now to avoid a problem with the courts later. Nothing happened. So, you know, what's happened now in General Kelly's point of view is they have given Congress a deadline, a 6-month deadline, by phasing out the program as it constitutes itself on an executive order. And by doing so, giving Congress basically a notice. You have to step up. So General Kelly's point of view is not that DACA is wrong or shouldn't be law of the land. His point of view, I think, is that Congress should step in, and Congress so far has failed to do that, so they've tried to give, in effect, an incentive. Having said that, of course, it's a game of chicken, because Congress may not respond to this. Congress may not legislate it. We'll see. It could easily get caught up, and 6 months from now, this program does end without a deal, and a lot of people would be affected then.
And Peter, I may be mistaken here, but I think if my memory is correct, General Kelly also testified before Congress and said that a physical wall wasn't going to keep people out of this country, that it was going to take a more nuanced approach to that. And I think the first weekend when Bannon and Miller were going around trying to bypass lawyers at DHS, it was General Kelly that was against their green card proposal. And
that's right.
The lawyers there. So here you have General Kelly, the man that's being called a disgrace to the uniform, actually being a voice of moderation on every one of these issues.
Yeah, he wants to have at least a very much a regular order. If the president's going to pursue policies, it ought to be through lawyers. It ought to be through a process that makes sure, in his view, that it's vetted and that it stands up. That's what did not happen, for instance, with the first travel ban that was put out by the president in the early days that John Kelly was not really read in on in a big way. So, you know, I think that, you know, you can understand the frustration of Democrats, though, who are looking at this situation. DACA is something that seems, you know, eminently important to them, and the idea that it would be put at risk has obviously frustrated members of Congress, and they've lashed out in the way that you've described. Lashing out at Trump, at least for Democrats, being vitriolic or shrill toward Trump is just not a winning equation. We've got to find another way. Anyhow, really.
And also, why alienate the one guy named General Kelly?
Come on.
Who can help you get what you want.
Saving the Republic?
Right. Like you said, it's going his way.
Yeah.
Republicans
There's
are
more happening with him than I'd even like to say, because I don't want to jinx it.
People are calling, you know, saying that Kelly is part of this cabal that's making him too moderate on these issues. Yeah. He's like, here's $1,000. No. Here's $1,000. No. I mean, seriously, why is he still doing it?
But there's an anti-Trump reflex.
They have one note.
They have one note.
There's an anti-Trump reflex, which is often warranted. Let's stipulate
often warranted
that it cannot be turned off in many Democrats.
I forget what the Democrats' new slogan is, but it ought to be lead, not resist, rather than resist. What was the new slogan? See, I can't even remember, honestly.
More pork chops,
more better.
Less cost.
Ooh. More better.
What is it? I would vote
honestly,
for that party.
What is it?
Hey, what is Mark Halpern?
Halpern.
What's their new slogan? What's the Democrat slogan?
Oh, my God. Is it
the Democrats? What is it?
It's powerful, stronger, together, forward,
lead.
You and us.
Better deal.
A better deal.
It's one word off, a better way, which is Paul Ryan's version.
I thought it was more pork chops, less money.
Well, that's easy. We all agree on that one.
That's bipartisanship.
That's
one note. Right there. You got one note.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.